The first time I saw Empress Vera of the Karun Dominion up close, I understood why entire systems surrendered before her fleets even arrived. She wasn't tall by human standards, maybe 5'8", but her presence made gravity feel heavier. Her skin shimmered like obsidian dusted with stars, and a crown of crystalline plates fanned back from her temples like frozen lightning. Her eyes were pale gold, too steady, too ancient, like a sun that had burned through mercy and found nothing left to warm. She stood at the center of the Dominion's diplomatic hall where the air smelled of metal and incense. Above her, a ceiling of living glass rippled with slow-moving constellations. Around her, nobles and generals waited in perfect silence. And there I was, Adam Ray's Earth Envoy, and apparently today's designated sacrifice. A translator drone floated near my shoulder, projecting my words into their sharp, musical language. My hands stayed behind my back the way the protocol manual demanded, even though my palms were sweaty enough to water plants. The Empress didn't blink. "Human envoy," she said, voice smooth as polished stone. "Your people have requested a ceasefire again." The translator caught up half a second later. It made her sound less like a thunderstorm and more like an executioner. I swallowed. "We're not requesting mercy, your radiance, we're offering perspective." A faint ripple went through the nobility, subtle like the first tremor before an avalanche. Perspective. Humans always had a talent for saying the wrong thing in the wrong room. The Empress tilted her head. "Perspective does not alter outcomes. Your moons burn, your fleet dissolves, your borders recede, the Dominion advances." Her words weren't cruel. Cruelty implied enjoyment. This was worse. This was inevitability. I forced myself to meet her gaze. "Then why summon me at all?" The hall sharpened. Even the guards' spearpoints shifted a fraction. Vera's eyes narrowed the tiniest amount. "Because the Dominion has studied humanity, you are anomalous." "Anomalous how?" I asked carefully. "You fight after losing." Her voice dipped like a blade. "You sing when you mourn, you build when you are starving, you look at a predator and offer your hand." My throat tightened, but I kept my tone steady. "We don't always win. But we don't stop." The Empress stepped down from her dais with a slow, measured grace. Each footfall was quiet, but I felt it in my ribs. She approached until she was close enough that I could see tiny fractures of light in her irises, like cracks in gold leaf. Her next words were almost soft. "Tell me, human, what does hope taste like?" The question hit me sideways. The diplomats behind me shifted uncomfortably. Hope wasn't a resource, it wasn't a fleet formation. It wasn't something you could measure in a lab, but I knew something else. I remembered my grandmother back in Lowe's Ray's colony cooking in a little habitat kitchen while sirens wailed outside. She used to tell me, "If the world ends today, Mijo, we eat first. Not because we're hungry, but because we're still alive." I took a slow breath. "It tastes like home," I said. The hall fell silent again, but this time it wasn't just obedience. It was confusion. Vera's eyes didn't leave mine. "Home is a location, a jurisdiction, a claim." "No," I said gently, surprising even myself. "Home is a feeling, it's where you're safe enough to breathe." Something flickered in her expression, so quick I almost missed it. Then she turned away as if bored. "Your words are wind, yet the Dominion is curious. You will remain aboard my flagship for observation." My stomach dropped. Observation sounded like a polite word for captivity. A guard stepped forward. I didn't resist. Resistance was a good way to end up as a footnote in the Dominion's conquest logs. But as they escorted me out, I glanced back. The Empress stood alone at the center of the hall, surrounded by silence and power, and somehow looking like the loneliest creature in the galaxy. The Empress's ship, her flagship, wasn't a ship. It was a moving city built around a living core. Walls pulsed faintly like slow breathing. Corridors rearranged themselves when no one was looking. The air tasted too clean, scrubbed of everything imperfect. They gave me quarters bigger than my entire childhood apartment, a luxury prison. A tall attendant, one of the Empress's sable court, stood outside my door constantly, expression unreadable. They didn't speak unless spoken to. They didn't blink often. The first day I tried diplomacy. The second day I tried silence. The third day I tried humor. None of it landed. And then on the fourth day I caught a smell. Not metallic incense, not sterile ship air, something else. It was faint but unmistakable. Heat, oils, something browning, cooking. I followed the scent down a side corridor past two confused guards who clearly weren't used to prisoners wandering and found a chamber that looked like a laboratory pretending to be a kitchen. There were burners, containers, a prep surface made of black crystal, and a tall Karun in a chef's cloak moving with sharp precision. He glanced at me like I was a stray animal that had somehow entered a museum. This chamber is restricted, he said. I'm not here to steal state secrets, I replied. I'm here because that smells incredible. He blinked once. You possess olfactory sensitivity. I possess a stomach, I said, same as you. He looked offended. The Empress does not eat, not as you do. That stopped me. What do you mean she doesn't eat? His voice lowered. Her physiology requires nourishment. But consumption is ceremonial. It is performed before cameras for symbolism, for dominance. She does not experience desire. I stared at him. So she's basically performing hunger for the empire. Correct, he said, as if explaining a simple math equation. I leaned against the doorway. What happens when she's alone? His eyes flicked away. When she is alone, the ship is very quiet. That phrase lodged in my chest like a hook. I turned back toward my quarters, mind spinning. Because I remembered her question. What does hope taste like? I couldn't give her hope in a speech, but maybe I could feed her something real. A human offering. I didn't have access to Earth ingredients, obviously. But a flagship that could conquer half the galaxy had a ridiculous inventory of proteins, grains, and nutrient compounds, so I bargained. I traded my Earth stories for access to supplies. I traded jokes for a skillet. I traded patience for spices synthesized from Karun botanical archives. It took days. And the whole time the Sable Court watched me like I was building a bomb. Maybe I was, a bomb made of butter and rice. The dish I chose was simple because simple was honest. Chicken and rice, garlic, onion, salt, pepper. A little paprika from a synthesized analog I begged the chef to make. Food that didn't try to impress you, food that just stayed. The Karun chef watched my hands the way someone watches an alien ritual. You are wasting heat, he observed. It's called sautéing, I said. You are forcing flavor through controlled burning. That's one way to put it, he frowned. This is irrational. It's human, I corrected. There's a difference. When the rice finally steamed and the chicken browned, the air filled with a smell so comforting it almost hurt. My throat tightened. For a second, I wasn't on an alien flagship. I was in my grandmother's kitchen, hearing old music through a cracked speaker while the world outside fell apart. I plated it carefully on a simple dish. Then I stared at it, a stupid plate of food, against an empress who ruled through fear. And yet my hands trembled like I was holding a weapon. I took a slow breath, then turned to the attendant by the door. I want an audience, I said. They didn't respond, so I raised my voice. I want to see the Empress. The corridor remained silent. Then at last the attendant spoke, voice like a blade sliding from a sheath. She does not receive you unless summoned. I held the plate up. Then tell her, I said, that hope tastes like this. The Empress arrives. I expected rejection. I expected guards. I expected punishment for insolence. Instead, an hour later, the door opened without a sound, and Empress Vera stepped into my quarters as if she'd always belonged there. She wore no crown, no ceremonial armor. Just a simple dark robe, her hair plaits unadorned. For the first time, she looked less like a deity, more like a person who had forgotten how to be one. Her eyes drifted to the plate on the table. Explain, she said. I gestured for her to sit. She didn't, so I didn't either. This is food, I said. Not ceremonial, not symbolic, just food. Her gaze sharpened. The Dominion consumes engineered nutrients. This isn't nutrients, I said. This is a memory you can taste. She looked at me as if I'd spoken nonsense. Then she moved closer, slow and cautious, like approaching an unfamiliar animal. The smell reached her, her nostrils flared slightly, her eyes narrowed. She didn't speak, she simply stared at the plate like it might bite her. I picked up the spoon and held it out, offering it like a peace treaty. Try it, I said. Vera's hand hovered over the utensil. For a long moment nothing happened, then she took it. Her fingers were cool, skin textured like polished stone. She lifted a small bite to her mouth, chewed once, twice. Her throat moved as she swallowed, and then she froze, not like a dramatic pause, like a system that had encountered an error it wasn't programmed to handle. Her eyes widened a fraction as if something inside her had cracked open. I didn't speak. I didn't move, I just watched. Because the Empress of the Dominion, conqueror of worlds, destroyer of fleets, blinked. And a single tear slipped down her cheek. It glittered in the light like liquid crystal. She didn't wipe it away. She looked down at the spoon in her hand as if it had betrayed her. What is this? She whispered, voice rough in a way I hadn't heard before. I swallowed hard. It's comfort. Her breath hitched. The second tear followed, then the third, her expression twisted with confusion and fury as if emotion itself offended her. I do not, she stopped. Her voice broke. I do not cry. I stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle her. It's okay, I said softly. You're allowed. Her eyes snapped up. Aloud, the word was sharp, bitter, like she'd never heard it in reference to herself. I nodded once. Aloud, she stared at me like I was insane, then she took another bite, and another. Each one was small, careful, like she didn't trust the food to stay real. Her shoulders trembled. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. She covered her mouth with one hand, horrified. "This is weakness," she breathed. "It's proof you're alive," I replied. She stared at the plate as if it held a universe. After a long silence, she asked the question I hadn't expected. "Who cooked this for you when you were small?" The words hit so close to home I almost flinched. "My grandmother," I said. "When everything was falling apart, she cooked anyway." Vera's gaze drifted to the living glass ceiling. "When everything fell apart for me," she murmured, "no one cooked, they sharpened blades. They demanded vows, they called me radiance before I was grown." Her voice thinned. "They told me the Dominion's hunger was my hunger." I realized then that the Empress hadn't asked about hope because she didn't understand the concept. She asked because she'd been starving for it her entire life. The truth of the Dominion. She sat down finally, slow, as if sitting made her feel less like an empress and more like something fragile. Her eyes stayed fixed on the plate. "I have consumed thousands of meals," she said quietly. "All of them watched, recorded, applauded." She looked at me. "This is the first time I have tasted privacy." I exhaled, heart pounding. "You don't have to perform here." Her lips pressed together. "I have never existed anywhere else." A silence stretched between us, full of things neither of us had words for. Then the ship trembled faintly. An alert chimed somewhere distant. Vera's posture changed instantly, spine straightening, face smoothing back into cold perfection as if the tears had never happened. "Report," she called, voice suddenly imperial. A moment later, an attendant appeared at the door, bowing. "Radiance, the War Council requests your presence. Earth's outer colonies have..." "Enough," she snapped. The attendant froze, then retreated. Vera stood, the crownless Empress, returning to the shape the galaxy expected, but her eyes flicked to the plate, to the half-eaten meal, to the spoon still warm in her hand, and I saw it something dangerous, not anger, not fear, a choice. She looked at me. "Human," she said softly, "you have committed an act of treason." I blinked. "I cooked dinner." "You reminded an empress she is a living being." She stepped closer, so near I could feel the cold of her skin radiating like moonlight. "That is treason to an empire built on hunger." My mouth went dry. She reached up, touching the tear track still faintly visible on her cheek. Then for the first time her expression changed into something almost human, a small, uncertain smile. "Cook again," she said, not as an order, as a request. I nodded, throat tight. "Anytime." Her smile faded into seriousness. "You do not understand what you've started," she warned. "I think I'm starting to," I said. She turned toward the door, and before she left she paused, just long enough to say something that made my blood run cold. "Dominion will not tolerate a radiance who learns to feel." Then she vanished into the corridor, swallowed by the ship's shifting walls. I stared at the half-finished plate on the table, at the spoon she'd set down with trembling fingers, at the faint smear of rice where an empress had proven she was still capable of being touched by something simple. And suddenly I wasn't afraid of the war outside the ship. I was afraid of what would happen when the Dominion realized their empress had finally tasted home. Outro hook. That night, the ship's lights dimmed to a deep twilight hue, and I didn't sleep. Because at exactly 03:17 ship time, my door opened without a sound. A small figure stepped inside, silent, hooded, guarded by no one. They pulled back the hood, not Vera, someone younger, smaller, with the same golden eyes but filled with panic instead of power. The stranger whispered in broken, translated English, "You fed her." My body went rigid. "Who are you?" I asked. The young Karun's hands shook. "I am her blood," they said, "her heir." Then they looked at the plate still sitting on my table like a sacred artifact, and in a voice cracking with terror, they whispered the words that promised the galaxy was about to burn, "They will kill her for crying."